In a recent order of books, I received this beautiful but simple paper wrap pamphlet. It's a common technique used commercially for thinner limp covered books. This example is particularly beautiful, especially for a bookbinding bibliography. I thought it would be perfect for short stories or poetry, and I made a model of it using a Dickens short story. Let's analyse how it's made. Looking at the head or tail, it's clearly a single section, and looking at the middle, it's wire stitched or stapled. But on the outside of the spine, there's no sign of these staples. They've been covered by the beautiful decorative paper wrapper. The pamphlet has been sewn onto a light card, which this decorative paper wraps around about 60mm or 2.5 inches around the fore-edges of the card at front and back. It's only attached on the inside with these turn-ins. The first step is to spend way too much time looking for an appropriate short story to bind. It has to be on Project Gutenberg, be interesting to me but not potentially offensive to other people. This ruled out Hemingway. And after editing, it must result in a pamphlet of between 16 and 24 pages. I remembered reading The Signalman when I was young, and it had some sort of impact on me. I'm no longer a fan of Gothic fiction, but I love reading Dickens, and for sentimental reasons and because it came out the perfect length, I chose it. Then spend 2 weeks learning how to use InDesign. You can skip this part because I've done it for you, and you can use the PDF I produced. If you sign up at the free level on my Patreon, it's available there. I fold it like any section, crease out from the middle to distribute any stretch in each direction, crisp the fold up with your bone folder on each side, again evening out any stretch. Then I cut some 300 GSM or 10-point card to the same size as the text paper. The paper is A4, and I actually cut the card to 300mm instead of 297, as the card has to fold around the pamphlet. The edges will get trimmed later anyway. The paper, card and decorative paper are all cut to the bookbinding convention of short grain. The paper I'm using is Freelife 100 GSM vellum texture white, which is a nice warm white. It is expensive and hard to get. I'm thinking of adding it as something I sell. I wanted something a little bit lighter than my favourite Mohawk. I fold the card lightly at first to find the centre, but place the pamphlet inside before using the bone folder to get the crease to conform to the shape of the spine of the pamphlet. A couple of bulldog clips will make the sewing easier. I'm going to do a simple 5-hole pamphlet stitch. You can use a ruler to carefully mark out the hole positions, but that's too fiddly for me. I just punch the end holes in about 13mm from each end. I'll trim 2 or 3mm off later, and they'll end up being about 10mm from each end, which is perfect. Then the centre hole, and then a hole in between the end and centre holes. I just judge this by eye. No one will notice if I'm off by a bit. Punch through at 45 degrees and it will come out perfectly in the middle of the outside of the fold. In case you're wondering, I used the very basic tool Booklet Creator to do the imposition. Some people have given me negative feedback on this software. It works well for me, but I'm not going to recommend it because I don't want a heap of angry messages telling me I'm recommending garbage software. I'm going to start the sewing from the inside, which means the knot will be visible. You can start on the outside so the knot won't be visible, but you will feel it through the covering paper, and a hole might wear through eventually. I'd rather just see the knot. Start in the middle hole, go out, down to the end and back. Skip the middle hole on the way back down to the other end. Return to the middle so that the tails of the thread are either side of the thread running down the middle of the inside. Tie a square knot over the top of this thread and trim the thread to leave short tails. Another thing I know some people are wondering is, what is my printer? Well, a laser printer gives nice dark print on textured specialty papers. I just used my cheap Brother HLL2375DW, which is a cheap compact duplexing laser printer which is very economical in regard to cost of toner. It's perfect as a small office printer, but it is limited in functionality. I was recently disappointed to find out it will not duplex A5, and it is a pain in the neck to configure. So again, I'm not going to recommend it. You could just finish here, and I often bind up manuals and articles like this, but it's the decorative paper that makes this little booklet. Now is the time to trim the fore-edge. I take off just enough to make the fore-edge even. I measured 147 millimeters in from the spine at the head and tail. I need to work out how long to make the decorative paper. I don't know why I needed to write this down. It's just the length of A4 plus 2 times 60 rounded up to 420 millimeters. I crease the first turn-in off the book. I crease it over a piece of scrap card so it has the correct shape. Then I place the pamphlet into the turn-in and tightly wrap the paper around it. I want it tight, but not so tight that it stops it from closing. Then I fold the second turn-in. Gluing the turn-ins down is straightforward. I'm using a thick, which equates to dry, EVA or PVA. I want to minimise the stretch of the decorative paper, and I want it to dry quickly so I can finish the book fast. I square up the ends by trimming off 2 or 3 millimeters. I'll let it dry under some lightweight, putting a moisture barrier of baking paper and some blotting paper up against the turn-ins. Finally, I print out a label. The PDF for this is available with the PDF for the booklet. I made the label to be the same size as the one on the original I'm copying. I put a thin line just outside this size. If you cut the label out just inside this line, it will end up the same size as mine. The PDF is formatted to A5. If you print it on A4 paper like I did, make sure the computer doesn't scale the PDF. Manually set the scale to 100%. I have a bad habit of putting the labels on slightly crooked, so I decided to make a little jig to hopefully help with this. The original is 35mm down from the head and centered on the width. I position mine the same. I think this is a wonderful little project. If you have the text you want to bind, you can make it in under 30 minutes. I used a very nice Italian paper I got from Kami Papers in Melbourne. Details are in the description below. The red and green made me think of the signal light in the story. I think it looks great, and a lot of people will be getting little paper-wrapped pamphlets for Christmas this year. Sign up at the free level of my Patreon to get the PDF, and while you're there you might like to consider supporting Daz Bookbinding at a paid level. I hope you've enjoyed today's video. As always, I really appreciate you hitting the big thumbs up button. If you're able and want to, you can support the making of more videos like this through Patreon or with a one-off contribution, and the details are in the description below. If you want to be notified of my future videos, please hit the subscribe button. Until next time, cheerio.